almost perfectly matched up, and the OD, and we still have a little bit of this missing area. But the way I'm going to get rid of some of that is I'm going to grind off one side. I'm going to flush out this side over here, and that's going to leave me almost 1/8 of an inch on this other side that I'm going to be able to take off and then start rounding without having that interfere with me too much. Let's see how it goes. Okay, here we are with the edge all ground off, and that's the little bit of live edge that we've got showing, but that's going to grind right off as soon as we round this edge off. And let's finish this thing up and hope it turns out as nice as the other two. There it is, roughed in with the disc sander and the drum sander. So now I'll get after it with the DA and then finish it off by hand. There's number 2, and hiding behind it is number 3. Stain this one, and we're done with the handles. Okay, there they are. Handle 1, top drawer, middle drawer, and the bottom drawer. And they're not going to have this deep contrast in color on a light background because the cabinetry that's already in the kitchen is a darker cabinet. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on these cabinets the door fronts, and get those stained that dark color, and then we'll get those mounted to the drawers. All right, it's the next morning, and I have just very little time to work on this today. But hey, I know that you've probably been noticing my artwork all over my workbench here. That's my grandson working with me. When I'm drawing up here and such, he likes to come up and help me. But it was my intentions this morning to put these inserts in the back of the handles so that I could use bolts to secure these to the front of the drawers. But after doing a little research on YouTube, I found a gentleman who did some testing with this type insert and did pull tests on them, did tension tests on them as far as, screwing the bolts in on them, torque tests, and he was actually getting better results, and it was in a cherry hardwood. Just tapping the wood itself, and sometimes he would try to reinforce it by putting in super glue on the threads and letting it dry. But actually his best results that I saw were just straight up tapped wood. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find center by crossing across here, and I'm going to tap in a 1/2 inch into that, which is going to leave me probably 1/4 inch of meat on the end of that hole. But as you can see, the threads tapered just a little bit. I took this tap, a regular tap, and I ground on it to make more of a bottoming tap. And I won't want to run the threads in all the way so that those threads going in the bolt hit these end threads, because I could potentially break out the wood. So I am going to put it on time lapse. I'm going to find the centers, and then once I do that, I am going to get some 1/4 inch. Well, I might lay out a board as a template so that I can do the rest exactly the same. All right, here we go. All right, I've determined that I want it 4 7/8 of an inch from center to center. I grabbed this piece of 3/4 inch hardwood as my template for doing all the handles, so they'll be the same. I've determined that it's a 13/64 drill bit for a 1/4 tap. I've tested it in a piece of leftover, and I'm real pleased with the quality of the thread. So I'm going to figure out how I'm put a piece of tape on my drill bit, and I'm going to want a 1/2 inch of penetration into each handle. So I'm going to make that piece of tape 1.25 inches from the tip, and then I'm going to switch over to a hand tap for the tap itself, so that I don't end up going too deep and busting the handle, hopefully. But let's see how it goes. Those 3 are drilled and tapped and ready to go on. I might have to grind just a little off the ends of the bolts so I don't bottom out against these holes. It's going to be close. It depends on how well I taper in these holes on the back of the actual drawers themselves. But that's it for this morning. I'll see if I can get back here this afternoon and maybe get some of that poly work done. All right, it's the following morning, and I had a busy day yesterday away from here. But I did get back late and get a few things done. I didn't get any of it filmed because the lighting is very poor up here in the evening, especially with some overcast skies. So I'll turn the camera around and show you how far I got along. But before I get anything done today, I got to do some cleanup. This place is just a mess, and it's hard to get anything done, especially I'm putting on that poly and I got dust all over the place, and just not a good situation. So I'll get cleaned up and then get to work. All right, a question to all you professional cabinet makers out there, drawer installers. How many screws should you put in these sliding rails? I may have overdone it. I got out front as close as I possibly could to hold that weight. I used a lot of the available holes, but there are still a lot of holes. There's 2 back there in that black plastic section that are stacked over top of one another. But is there a quantity of screws that is right? Let me know in the comments. Got the first coat of polyurethane on the front and sides of the cabinet itself, and then let's see, I made up that board that I used for a template for drilling these handles. I just tapped some holes through it and used those same bolts to hold these so that I wouldn't get my fingers all over them. And I've got to do all these surfaces that I polyed last night with some steel wool. I've got some triple aught that I picked up for this project. And over here I took the slides off the drawers and lightly sanded them, got off all my little scuff marks, and got poly on the inside of the drawers, on the tops and the outsides. Still haven't put anything on the bottom. But they all got their first coat on them, and again, I'll hit those with that 000 steel wool, and we'll get going on that. And then over here, let me pick these over here so there's a little more light. I got the first coat on all of the drawer fronts. So those, once I get everything cleaned up, they'll get buffed up with that steel wool, and we'll get the next coat on. All right, 3.5 hours later, I'm finally to the point where I feel comfortable cleaning these up, sanding them down, or using the steel wool on them in order to get that second coat of polyurethane on those. So I'm going to put it on fast forward again, time lapse, and we'll get these things knocked down, smoothed up, and ready for the next coat. During this process, I used 320 grit sandpaper before using the triple lot steel wool. All right, hallelujah. The second coat is on. Everything except for the back sides of these drawer fronts. And after it dries overnight, I'll flip those over and get those exposed sections done. But hopefully tomorrow, I'll be able to get the slides back on those drawers and reinstalled in the cabinet. Mount these door fronts to there along with those handles that I made, and maybe get this thing to the point where I've actually got to go inside and do some drywalling and get ready for this cabinet to go in. And another thing on this cabinet right here, the sides aren't going to show. The only reason I did that is in the future, if I want to open that hole back up for some reason and use that cabinet somewhere else, everything was done at once, but it's all going to be hidden. It's just the way it's going to be. All right, see you tomorrow. All right, it's the following day, and I came up last night, flipped these over after the other side had about 6 hours to dry, and I came up and put the first coat of poly on these sections, the back sections of the drawers. But I'm going to hit those real quick with some sandpaper and steel wool, and I'll get the second coat on these. right, that is the last of the poly work. So I think I pretty much used the majority of that quart on this cabinet. And you saw me using that LED light because of the lighting that's up here. It just gives me a better idea if I have any dry spots. But one of the things that I've been dealing with here lately is trying to figure out whether I want to glue on these drawer fronts onto the boxes themselves. I purchased the screws right over there. Let me zoom in on that. I purchased those screws to go through the back, or actually from the back side, and I don't know which side is the front now. I'll have to look at my drawer slide holes to figure out which is the front. But whether I'm going to just screw on those drawer fronts along with the bolts into the handle, those 1/4-20s that go through there. And I'm not going to put a lot of pressure on those wooden threads that are tapped into the back of my pull handles. So it's not like I'm going to depend a lot on those bolts. Those I'm going to reuse to hold the drawer fronts on. I'm going to also use those screws over there. And I think I'm going to go without glue at this point. And if for some reason it doesn't work, I'll go ahead and pull the screws out, glue it, and so I'm going to put the drawer slides back on each one of the drawers, make sure they fit in the cabinet properly, work properly, and then I'll turn around and wait for these faces to dry. I'll have to wait like 6 hours, and I'll go ahead and mount these drawer faces to the front. In the meantime, while I'm waiting for this to dry, I'm going to be going down into the kitchen, doing some drywall work, moving an outlet up to counter height instead of down towards the floor. But I've got plenty to do in the meantime. But I'll put this on time lapse, and we'll get some of this back together. Out of 3, I guess that's not bad. I'll dig into that middle drawer, see if I've got a screw that's not all the way in or a misalignment problem, and see if I can't get that figured out. All right, I got up here this morning right around 8:30, and it is almost 12 o'clock. So I've spent over 3 hours messing around, just putting those side rails on those drawers, but the majority of the time was spent on drawer number 2, the middle drawer. It did not want to soft close. It got a little scratchy at the end, and I don't know exactly what the problem was, but one of the other things is I took my air nozzle and I sprayed out the channels And as I was taking the screws in and out of the side, I noticed that I was having little wood chips down in the channel itself in the slide area, and I think that could have been the part of the problem right from the beginning, but it's working well now. And I've got a couple more hours to wait on those drawer fronts so that I can handle those. I'll get those mounted on, get the handles on it, and in the meantime, I'm going to go down and do a little drywalling. All right, here is the kitchen that cabinet is going into. I started to cover up some of the cabinets with plastic, but that's the opening where that cabinet is going. I am going to move that outlet up over the countertops so that it'll be usable. And I have some ugly drywall work that was done back in 1980. After taking care of that drywall over there, I'm going to prime this wall, and I've got more of this stick-on backsplash that I'm going to continue around the corner and maybe over here to the light switch area. But this is the countertop that I'm trying to get that granite top to flush out in the top, and I think I've got it fairly close in the front also. But that's what we're doing. This is the material that I'm using to contain my mess as best I can, keep it from getting out of the kitchen area and all over the rest of the interior of the house. But it's a PPG product. They call it an overspray protective sheeting. But I purchased this roll a few years ago, probably getting on 4 years ago, when I spray painted a car in my garage, and I covered all my toolboxes and shelving and such, and it has come in handy for a lot of projects. But over here on the outside, you can see that I've kind of double lapped it there in the middle, and I'm going to take my razor knife and cut it so that I have a slit to walk through. But that should keep the majority of the mess in that smaller kitchen area. And that's what it looks like from the other side. So all the mess that I'm going to make there hopefully will stay in this little area. It's the following day. I got that first coat of drywall sanded this morning and a second coat on it. And it's part of it's in a corner, so I'm only doing half at a time, so it's going to take a little while. But I came up and decided that I'm going to do the layout of these handles a little differently. I was going to use this template that I use for drilling the handles, but because of my inconsistency with the handles themselves, they're going to end up possibility of being on there a little cockeyed. So in turn, let me turn the camera around here and I'll give you a close-up of how I'm going to put these handles in and make them look right. All right, first off, I'm going to, on the top drawer, center the handle. And on the other two drawers, I'm going to offset them towards the top. But I laid this out so the handle is, where I want it to be, the outline of it. And then I went downstairs and I got some set screws, and I ground them to a point on the end, and you can see I have one in. I'll put the other one in, and then I'll tap it with the palm of my hand after I've lined it up, and it should give me two little points to drill those holes. And so I'll turn the camera around and we'll see how this goes. All the drawer faces are drilled, and now I have to mount them onto the drawers themselves and keep everything level and the holes looking so that the handles are straight. So let's figure out how we're going to do that. All right, this is what I decided to do. I found the center of this cross rail, put a piece of tape at each end. The center line is the top one. I made up a piece of 1/4 inch on the planer that I'm placing on top of the door, so there's going to be a 1/4 inch space between the door fronts. And then I measured my door front, came down, and I clamped on one of those bar clamps, one of the less expensive ones from Harbor Freight, and clamped those so that now, let me grab this without dropping it, and I'm going to set that on there, and that should have about an 1/8 inch on both sides, there and there. I'll get that centered, and then I'll go ahead and drill those holes and mount the handle, and then I'll go ahead and put in the rest of the screws to secure that door front to the drawer. All right, the cabinet making part of this video is over. I still have to get it installed, get it fastened to the wall, get the granite countertop put on it, that black walnut backsplash and extension that I have figured out and how to put that on. But as far as the cabinet goes, it's done. And yes, it was way above my pay grade, and I learned a lot on it. But I don't regret it. It's going to be nice to have something in the house that I can say I built it. All right, I will show you some pictures of finishing this thing up. And thanks for watching. I do really appreciate it. Have a great day.